Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tale, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late now. Let's get into today's tale. My husband declared, "This house should be in my name. Men are the head of the household." I smiled and said, "You're absolutely right." The next day, he opened a document, and the second he understood what it meant, he started screaming I was born and raised in Asmal Town in Georgia, where life was simple and dreams were big. I met my husband, Blake, in college. He was charming, ambitious, and had a smile that could light up a room. We fell in love quickly, and after graduation, we decided to settle down in Atlanta. We both landed decent jobs, and within a few years, we were able to buy our first home together. The house was modest but beautiful, a two-story brick home with a white picket fence and a backyard big enough for our future children to play in. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. We moved in and began making memories, painting walls, planting flowers, and building a life together. As the years went by, I noticed a change in Blake. He became more controlling, more critical, and less affectionate. He would make comments about how I should be grateful for the life he provided, how I should focus on being a good wife and not worry about my career aspirations. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just stress from work or the pressures of adulthood, but the comments became more frequent, more biting. He would belittle my achievements, mock my interests, and dismiss my opinions. I started to feel like a guest in my own home, walking on eggshells to avoid his wrath. One evening, after a particularly heated argument about finances, Blake looked me in the eyes and said, "This house should be in me. Name men are the head of the household." I was stunned. We had bought the house together, split the down payment, and shared the mortgage payments equally. His statement wasn't just about the house. It was about control, dominance, and erasing my contributions. I took a deep breath, smiled, and said, "You're absolutely right." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over. I realized that this wasn't just about a house. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, my dignity, and my life. I began to devise a plan. I gathered all our financial documents, reviewed the mortgage agreement, and consulted with a lawyer. I discovered that due to a clerical error, the house was actually in my name alone. Blake had never noticed because he had never bothered to read the paperwork. I decided to keep this information to myself, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. The next day, I prepared a document, a quitclaim deed, transferring the house solely into Blake's name. I presented it to him over dinner, explaining that I wanted to honor his role as the head of the household. He was elated, boasting about how things were finally as they should be. He signed the document without reading it, too caught up in his own ego to notice the details. What he didn't realize was that the document didn't transfer ownership to him. It reaffirmed that the house was already in my name alone. Over the next few weeks, I quietly made arrangements. I found a new apartment, moved my belongings while Blake was at work, and filed for divorce. When he returned home one evening, he found the house empty and a letter on the kitchen table. In the letter, I explained everything: the true ownership of the house, the document he'd signed, and my decision to leave. I told him that I deserved better, that I refused to be treated as less than an equal partner. Blake was furious. He called me, screamed at me, and threatened legal action. But when he consulted with his lawyer, he was told that he had no claim to the house. The document he had signed, combined with the original mortgage agreement, left him with nothing. He was forced to move out, starting over from scratch. I flourished in my new life. I pursued my career, built new friendships, and rediscovered my passions. The house, once a symbol of control and oppression, became a sanctuary of freedom and self-discovery. I learned that sometimes the best revenge is living well. It had been 5 months since I left Blake. 5 months of peace. I had settled into my small apartment just outside Marietta. My job had picked up. I started seeing someone casually. Nothing serious. Just a reminder that I was still alive, still a person. But Blake wasn't done. It started with the calls. At first, just one or two, then a few a week. I didn't answer. Then came the emails. Some were angry, some were sad, others were just plain weird. One morning, I opened my inbox to a single sentence: "You think you've won, but I'm not done." It gave me chills. I blocked. The email, I changed my number. I thought that was the end. But the next week, I came home and noticed something odd. My mailbox was open. Nothing was missing, but it had clearly been opened. The week after that, my car's tire was slashed. Not all four, just one, just enough to send a message. I filed a police report, but they told me there wasn't enough proof to pin it on anyone. What Blake didn't realize is that the house, the one he had screamed about, the one he said should be in his name, I never sold it. I kept it. I rented it out to a nice couple with 2 kids. They were good people. The husband was a local school teacher. The wife ran a small bakery. They paid on time, respected the space, and sent me Christmas cards. That house had turned into a steady stream of income. And I never told Blake. But one day the tenants called me. "We think someone's been watching the house," the husband said. "There's a black truck that parks across the street. Same time every few nights. The guy never gets out, just sits there." I knew who it was. I finally reached out to my lawyer. We filed for a restraining order, but Blake was careful. He never made direct threats. Never trespass, just stayed in the gray areas watching, waiting, letting me know he was still there. One night after a long day, I walked into my apartment and found something on my kitchen counter, a single Polaroid picture. It was me taken from behind as I stood in line at the grocery store that morning. That's when I snapped. I called the police. This time they took it seriously. I moved to a temporary location. The landlord changed my locks. Cameras went up. I slept with the lights on for a week, but the damage was done. Blake had made it clear he wanted control again. He wanted to remind me that he was still out there. That's when I started doing some digging of my own. I knew Blake had a good job in finance, but after I left him, things started falling apart for him financially. Turns out he'd taken out a personal loan shortly after our divorce. A big one. He thought he'd be getting the house or half of it. He planned for it, but when that didn't happen, he spiraled. The loan was in default. He was behind on credit card payments. He had been evicted from a rental 2 towns over. He was unraveling, and he blamed me for it. But the real twist, he had borrowed money from someone he shouldn't have, and now they were looking for him. One of them showed up at my office. Big guy, black coat, sunglasses, indoors. "You know where Blake is?" Hesked, arms crossed, voice flat. "No," I said. And that was the truth. Tell him we're not waiting anymore. And then he left. I never expected to feel fear for Blake, but suddenly I was scared for him, not out of love. That was gone, but fear, like when you see someone walking into traffic and they don't even know they're about to be hit. The next week I got another call from my tenants. The house had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but the upstairs bedroom, the one Blake used to sleep in, was trashed. Smashed, mirror holes in the walls. It looked like someone had been screaming while tearing it apart. They filed a report. I installed more cameras, but I couldn't stop wondering, was it Blake or was it someone looking for Blake? I needed proof. I needed to catch him doing something on record. So I set a trap. I had the security company install hidden cameras inside the house. I left a few old photos in the drawer of what used to be our bedroom ones with me and him, just enough bait for his ego to bite. And 3 nights later, he did. He broke in again. This time he stayed longer, sat on the bed, looked at the photos, talked to himself, cried, then started shouting, "I built this life." He ripped the pictures up, then punched a hole in the wall again. All of it was caught on camera. I turned it over to the police. My lawyer pushed the court for a criminal trespassing case. They finally had enough to take action. And just when I thought it was over, Blake disappeared. No one could find him. Not the police, not the men who were hunting him, not even his sister who called me in. A panic. The last footage we had of him was from my house, sitting alone in the dark, sobbing, and then nothing. Weeks passed. No Blake, no black truck, no strange emails, no broken windows. It was the quietest month I'd had in a year. I started breathing normally. Again, I even considered taking a short vacation. I thought maybe he'd given up. Or maybe whatever mess he was in had swallowed him whole. Then I got a letter. No return address, no postmark, just a white envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a note handwritten, "You'll never be free." This was never just about the house. That was it. No signature, but I knew the handwriting, and I knew what it meant. Blake hadn't disappeared. He had just gone underground a few days after the letter I got. A message from the tenants at the house. They said a man claiming Toby, the owner, had come by. He told them he was there for a routine inspection. He even had a clipboard and wore a polo shirt like he worked for a property management company. But he didn't. Leave a card didn't give a name, and the tenants noticed something weird. He knew the exact location of the attic crawl space, the one that had been boarded up for years. He didn't even ask, just went straight for it. I checked the security footage. It wasn't Blake. It was someone else, someone I'd never seen before. Tall, bald, mid-50s, maybe looked like he'd done time somewhere, but there was one detail that made my stomach drop. He was wearing Blake's college class ring. That same night I drove down to the house and waited for the tenants to go out. I let myself in with the spare key and went up to the attic. The boards were loose. Some had been pulled off entirely. Inside was a bag, not mine. Not the tenants. Inside. The bag, a burner phone. Cash, maybe 10 grand. And a bunch of receipts from gas stations across southern Georgia and northern Florida. All recent, all in the last 2 weeks. And one more thing. A passport. Not Blake's. But the photo was of the bald man. The name on the passport didn't match anything I recognized. It took the phone straight to my lawyer, who called a private investigator. They were able to extract messages from it. Here's where it got really bad. One of the texts was from Blake. She still owns it. She hasn't sold. Once we scare the tenants out, I'll claim. It's abandoned. Then we torch it. Another. Her life isn't worth more than this house. You know what to do if I disappear. And the last one, there's a second deed in the basement. You'll need it to prove ownership if she gets stubborn. I was shaking when I read that back when we lived together. Blake always kept an old fireproof safe in the basement. I hadn't touched it since, moving out, assuming it was empty or his, but now I had to know. I went back with a locksmith. It took him 15 minutes to crack it open. Inside a fake deed, one that listed Blake as the sole owner of the property. It looked real good paper. The right font. Even the county clerk's seal was copied, but I knew it was fake. I'd had the real one verified years ago. I turned everything over to my lawyer and the cops. Suddenly, it was no longer about trespassing. It was fraud, conspiracy, arson, planning, maybe worse. A detective reached out a week later. He had found something else. Blake's name had come up in a separate investigation, this time in Miami. Something about stolen identities and financial scams tied to a shady offshore real estate scheme. Guess where he'd been funneling the money? Straight through fake property transfers using addresses in Georgia, including mine. They suspected the bald man was a fixer. Someone who cleaned up messes, scared people off, or worse. That's when I realized this was way bigger than revenge. Blake hadn't just wanted control. He wanted the house because he had made it the center of a bigger scam, one that could land him in prison for a very long time. The police issued a warrant for Blake's arrest, not for what he did to me, but for mail fraud and financial theft tied to the Miami investigation. They were closing in, but he was still missing. No digital trail, no credit card usage, no phone activity. It was like he had vanished completely again. And yet one night I came home, everything looked normal. Lights off, door locked. Nothing seemed touched, but there was something strange in the air, that smelled cheap cologne, the kindy Blake always wore. Thione. I told him I hated. I checked my bedroom and there it was, a single Polaroid. Not of me this time, it was a photo of the tenants taken from inside the house. That photo was the final line. Someone had been inside the house while the tenants were asleep, and it wasn't Blake. I was sure of that now. It was his fixer. The bald man, the one who was following his instructions. I called the police again. They put the house under surveillance. I warned the tenants. They moved out temporarily. Scared for their kids, I offered to pay for their hotel. I felt responsible because I should have shut this all down when the first sign showed up. I did something. Shouldn't have. I messaged Blake's sister. We hadn't talked since the divorce, but I figured if anyone knew how to reach him, it'd be her, and I was right. She didn't give me his number, but she said he's near Savannah. He's using a different name, but he checks an old voicemail box every few days. Leave a message. He'll hear it. So I did. I said, meet me at the house. One time, just us. You want this tent? Let's end it. I didn't go in alone. I had 2 cops wired in the bushes, camera hidden in every corner of the house, motion sensors ready to triple arms. I was done playing nice. Blake walked in right at 6:00 p.m. He looked bad, thin, tired, like he hadn't slept properly in weeks, but he still had that smug tone in his voice. I knew you'd call. You couldn't help yourself. I didn't even respond to that. He paced the living room like he owned it. Where are they? You have tenants, right? Or are they gone now? You scared them off, I said. Congratulations. He sat on the couch. Same spot he used to sit after every argument, like he was waiting for an apology. I just want what's mine. He said, You mean the house you tried to burn down, the one you used to launder money? He froze. You were sloppy, Blake. You left trails, you got greedy. His face changed, I could tell. He knew. I never signed up for prison, he said, and if I go down, I'm taking you with me. He pulled out a folder. Inside copies of our old joint tax returns mails from me about rental income, even a statement where I jokingly said, we should hide this from Uncle Sam. He was ready to drag me down with him. But what? He didn't know the folder was bugged. The cops had enough. Seconds later, they came in, guns drawn. Blake tried to run, but they had the doors blocked. He fought, screamed, tried to throw one of the folders at me. He yelled that I ruined his life, but he was cuffed and dragged. Out in minutes, Blake was hit with over a dozen charges. Fraud, attempted arson, conspiracy, breaking and entering, and more from the Miami side. He took a plea deal, 10 years, the bald man. Disappeared, probably back into whatever shadows had came from the house. It stayed empty for a while I couldn't bear to look at it, but eventually I went back. I want to be clear, I wasn't innocent either. I ignored the signs, I let the emotional abuses slide. For too long, I played mind games when I could have walked away clean. I stayed in the fight even when it turned dark. And yes, I joked about shady money moves. That joke almost cost me my freedom. So I confessed everything to the IRS, to the cops, to myself. I paid fines, got audited, lost most of the money it made from the rental, took a hit to my name. But I walked away free because it told the truth and I learned the truth. The hard way, control doesn't come with a title. Ownership doesn't mean love, and silence is never peace. 6 months after the trial. The house caught fire, electrical short, they said. But I knew better. It wasn't Blake. He was still behind bars. It was the house itself. That place had seen too much. It couldn't hold all the lies anymore. Insurance paid me out. I didn't rebuild. I donated the land to a women's shelter project. They turned it into a garden. I go there sometimes, and every time I walk past the gate, look at the fresh flowers blooming and whisper, you wanted the house I built a home.